What are you doing?
Filming?
Pictures of us?
Yeah.
Can I get your badge number?
0016.
Go.
Is it shiny enough for you?
It's very shiny, sir.
All right. Give me your driver's license, Mr. Fifth Amendment, right?
You filming right now?
I am.
How come?
He's got the camera on. He's got the camera on me right now as we're talking.
Well, good morning and welcome. I thank you for coming, and the other people who are here today, some of whom were also at the demonstration where this incident happened. Today is the first court appearance of Jeffrey Rice, the man who drove his car into a group of protesters back last November 25th. My name is Dave Bicking, and I'm speaking here today on behalf of Communities United Against Police Brutality, or C.U.A.P.B. C.U.A.P.B. has worked for 15 years here in the Twin Cities to assist survivors of police brutality, to educate the public about the problem and about their rights, and to engage in research and political action to improve policing and bring accountability to those who abuse their power. Today we want to show the court and the public that we care about the protection of protesters from those who would deliberately injure us for exercising our First Amendment right to assemble. We stand in support of the young woman who was hurt and all the others who were also in danger. We protest the way that the police and prosecutors have protected Jeffrey Rice from any serious consequences for his actions, with criminal charges that are far too minor and which come only after excessive delay. I was there in the intersection during this incident, as were some of the others gathered here today. We personally witnessed the attack on our protest from a variety of angles. We were gathered there to protest the grand jury decision in the Ferguson case. Many hundreds of us were there by the time this happened, and the crowd had grown much too large for us to all fit on the sidewalks. So a portion of the crowd was in the crosswalk across Lake Street, and others were filling the rest of the intersection. Though the police had begun to redirect traffic around the intersection, we were directing the remaining cars heading east on Lake Street to go north onto Minnehaha. Jeffrey Rice had the clear opportunity to continue on his trip with only the slightest delay, no more than if there had been construction in that intersection. Instead, after stopping briefly behind another car, he backed up and headed directly into the crowd of protesters. This is shown clearly on the videos that we linked to on the press release. He drove into the crowd, hitting several people who could not get out of his way. It was immediately clear to the people who were gathered there that he intended to go through the crowd no matter what it took, or who would be hit or injured. So several people that he hit wound up on the hood of his car, which is better than to be run over when you're hit. Valencia, a 16-year-old high school student, was knocked over by his car, and he stopped just as his left front tire was on top of her ankles. Protesters surrounded the car, both in justified anger and also to attempt to lift the car off her legs. Suddenly, Rice drove forward again through the crowd, nearly hitting another car. In the process, he knocked over several other protesters, including one who can be seen in the video, a very scary moment, who narrowly escapes having his head run over. As bad as this incident was, it could have been much worse, and the driver clearly didn't care that he could have seriously injured or even killed someone. For this, Jeffrey Rice has been charged by the city with just misdemeanor traffic offenses: careless driving and, quote, failure to avoid colliding with a pedestrian, unquote. As the newspaper says, these charges seldom lead to incarceration. Now, normally, a driver who strikes and injures a pedestrian would be detained by the police. But after just a brief stop, Rice was allowed to simply drive away. The initial police report listed him as being the victim. This is in spite of the fact the assault happened directly outside the windows of the 3rd Precinct police station, where we are certain the police were watching what was going on outside. And it was in spite of an ambulance being called, which took Valencia to a hospital for treatment. so the police knew what had happened. Now, this incident made the national news, I believe even a few international stories, even though there were many similar protests across the country that day. The reason is that because incidents like this are fortunately very rare. There are very few people who are crazy enough or angry enough to drive directly into a crowd. It is scary to think that this could establish a precedent for similar actions. And the weak action taken by the prosecutors and the city, in this case, make a repeat much more likely. It is also scary to see comments on news articles, comments that praise Rice as being a hero or justifying his actions. Now, we have participated in many such demonstrations in the streets of Minneapolis and other cities. We are very good at directing traffic and keeping people safe. But we cannot protect ourselves and others from those who are intent on doing us harm in this way. We will continue to protest police brutality, racial inequality, and the murder of unarmed people by the police. And we will be in the streets as necessary and appropriate. But we must also demand that attacks on protesters be treated as the serious crimes that they are. We must not allow the police, the prosecutors, and the city to essentially declare open season on protesters. So we are here today and will be at the court to demand that Jeffrey Rice be held accountable, and we will continue to watch the court action as it proceeds. There's a really important parallel here between this criminal case and the actions not taken by the government against Darren Wilson in Ferguson. It is and was important to protest the actions of Darren Wilson and the other people who have killed unarmed people, other police, I should say, who have killed unarmed people. And there are hundreds more since Ferguson. But even more importantly, we need to focus our attention not just on those individual officers, but on the system which allows those individuals to avoid any real consequences for their actions and allows them to continue to terrorize and abuse large segments of the public. That is what we were doing at that protest back last November. And now, here today, we call attention to the system which gives special lenient treatment to a person who has attacked us and our right to assemble. This system is the real problem, and we will continue to challenge this system which protects its own power while leaving the rest of us vulnerable. So we have here today with us the mother of the high school student who was injured. The police and the news account have callously referred to her as being slightly injured. Ricky Chevry will tell us more about the effects on her daughter and on her family.
I'm the mother of the young child that was run over, dragged on the block by this individual. I'm outraged that I raised my child strong enough to stand up for what she believes in and for her rights and the rights of others. And that she was run down like an animal for standing up for something she believes in. No parent, no family should ever get a phone call from their teenage child saying that she's been run over by a vehicle. It's heart-wrenching, it's gut-turning to see the footage of my child standing up for what she believes in and getting dragged around like a rag doll. I'm proud of who she is, who she's become, and what she's standing up for. And I will continue to stand up for my child and fight for her rights and the rights of others. Thank you.
How is she doing? Did she have any long-term injuries?
Emotionally, she's traumatized. She has body aches and pains all the time. Her legs constantly hurt. And she toughs it out. She's a strong person. And she shouldn't have had to go through what she's going through. No family should have their 16-year-old child in a hospital with injuries that are more than physical. scared of cars. She's don't want to drive. She should not have to be going through this.
Just want to finish saying that with a brief note on the media coverage on this story, which has followed pretty much slavishly what the police have reported. As you hear, this was not a slight or a minor injury, both physically and psychologically. And it's one thing for Jeffrey Rice's lawyer to try to trivialize the damage that he did. But the police and the prosecutors, who are supposedly in an adversarial position, have trivialized it in the same way, thus leading to these very minor charges and leading to really a travesty of justice in this case. Now, we also have many of the media who reported this story in a way that just followed exactly what the police said. The initial Star Tribune story had quotes only from the police and the police report, which, as I say, trivialized this. At first he was considered a victim, in fact. And bizarrely, they included a quote from his mother, of all people. This is a 40-year-old man. But at the same time, they didn't bother to interview or say anything from anybody who had actually witnessed the incident. The protesters there on the street or other people. The Star Tribune says they had a videographer right there on the street. And yet they had no testimony from anybody who had actually seen it. So we're here to set the story straight, that this is not what it appears to be in the paper. And fortunately, we have a very good video which has shown what really happened that day. So now the news stories talk about the car rolling into the crowd. Well, you can see from that video, that car did not roll into the crowd. He drove in quite deliberately and continued to accelerate into the crowd, despite the fact that he had clearly hit a number of people. And now, a few of the people he had hit who were carrying a banner had, been knocked up onto his hood, obscuring his vision. And he continues on still. He may never have seen Valencia, but she was knocked down and dragged some distance, or pushed some distance by the car before it wound up on top of her. That is so different from the story that we have heard in much of the media here. So it's time for the media to report the story as it's actually happened, and not just as stenographers for the police department. They are one side of the story, and unfortunately in this case we feel very strongly that they are the same side of the story as the perpetrator, Jeffrey Rice. And it's important to hear from the people. So we thank you very much for coming. We're happy to answer questions, and we may be available for some also. We're going to be heading over. It turns out that the actual court hearing is going to be at 8:30 in the new jail. We only find out these things in the morning of, so that's why we're here. But we'd be happy to answer any questions you have. We have several other people who were there that day. All we can figure is that he's getting special treatment for some reason. Whether he knows some people in power, whether, whatever his reasons were for doing this, or whether it's simply that the police don't want to take seriously any harm that comes to our protests because they oppose them. I mean, they were right there, and it's true, we were protesting the police. So right from the moment this happened, they clearly treated him differently than anybody else would be in that situation. And for heaven's sake, if a protester had driven into a crowd of police, they would be very lucky to be alive if they had done something like that. There is clearly a double standard here. So, yeah, and we can only speculate at this time. We would like to know more about his connections and about what the police did on that day, and we hope that possibly through a trial some of that will come out. This is just an arraignment. It's his first appearance in court, and I believe this is the point where he will be asked whether he pleads guilty or not guilty. If he pleads not guilty, I guess it's all over except for a sentencing hearing. I'm not a lawyer.
You mean if he pleads guilty?
Right, yes.
If he pleads not guilty, then
not
that
guilty,
starts
then there'll be a trial or further negotiations or whatever. But as I say, it's very unlikely that jail time would result from something like this. Despite the fact that if he had just injured somebody in a fight, to this extent, there would probably be jail time involved. So, and of course, he has quite a driving record to begin with, which you would think would make him be treated more seriously rather than more leniently.
If I end up on YouTube, I'm going to be upset.